Hello, everyone. Today we will listen to the drama and revenge-filled story of Vincent Hardwell, who contacted me via email and told her story.
They thought I was just another old man they could push into early retirement. They had no idea what they were dealing with. My name is Vincent Hartwell, and for 37 years, I built Morrison & Associates from a two-person accounting firm into a multi-million-dollar financial consultancy. I hired every employee, trained every manager, and personally secured every major client that kept the lights on. But apparently, that meant nothing when fresh-faced MBA graduates decided I was obsolete. The betrayal started with whispers I wasn't supposed to hear. I was working late on a Thursday evening in October, reviewing quarterly projections in my corner office on the 15th floor. The cleaning crew had already been through, leaving that familiar scent of industrial disinfectant that somehow smelled like dedication to me. 37 years of staying after everyone else had gone home. 37 years of being the last man standing when deadlines loomed. The conference room next to my office shared a ventilation system, and voices carried through the ductwork with surprising clarity. I discovered this acoustic quirk years ago, but had never used it to eavesdrop. Tonight, I wished I hadn't heard what I was about to hear. Vincent's becoming a liability. The voice belonged to Marcus Brennan, the ambitious VP I'd personally mentored for the past 8 years. I taught him everything about client relations, walked him through his first major presentations, even wrote his recommendation letter for his MBA program. His methods are outdated, and frankly, some of our younger clients find him uncomfortable to work with. I set down my reading glasses and moved closer to the wall, my heart beginning to pound in a way that had nothing to do with my recent cardiology checkup. The Pemberton account specifically requested someone younger for their next audit. That was Sarah Chen, the director of operations who'd started as my assistant 12 years ago. I'd paid for her night school classes out of my own pocket when the company budget was tight. They said Vincent seemed out of touch with modern financial software. Out of touch. The man who'd implemented the very software systems they were praising had apparently become obsolete in the eyes of clients I'd served for decades. How do we handle this delicately? Marcus again. Vincent's been here since the beginning. He's got relationships with every major client. Not anymore. Sarah's voice carried a coldness I'd never heard before. Most of the contacts he brought in have either retired or moved on. The new generation of decision-makers wants fresh faces, digital natives who speak their language. There was a pause. Then Marcus spoke with the kind of calculated cruelty that made my chest tighten. We need to position this as a generous early retirement package. Make him feel like he's being rewarded, not pushed out. What if he refuses? Sarah asked. Then we make his life uncomfortable until he chooses to leave. Reduce his client load, exclude him from strategic meetings, reassign his projects to younger staff. He'll get the message eventually. I pressed my palm against the cool wall, feeling the foundation of my life's work crumbling beneath me. These weren't strangers or competitors plotting my downfall. These were people I'd nurtured, promoted, trusted with the future of the company I'd built with my own hands. The beauty of it, Marcus continued, is that he's so close to full retirement age anyway. 67 is old enough that no one will question our decision. We frame it as a celebration of his legacy, while quietly transitioning his responsibilities to people who actually understand modern business practices. Legacy. They wanted to make me a museum piece, a relic of the past, to be honored in a gold watch ceremony before being forgotten entirely. I'll draft the retirement package proposal, Sarah offered. Something generous enough that he can't complain, but structured to incentivize quick acceptance. Maybe a lump sum payout instead of ongoing consultation fees. Perfect. And Sarah, make sure you emphasize the limited time offer aspect. We want him to feel pressure to decide quickly before he has time to really think about what he's losing. Their voices faded as they moved toward the conference room door, leaving me alone in my office with the devastating knowledge that my life's work was being stolen by the very people I'd treated like family. I walked to my window and stared out at the Denver skyline, lights twinkling in office buildings where other people were probably working late, building their own dreams, unaware that everything could be stripped away by ambitious underlings who saw loyalty as weakness. 37 years. I'd missed countless family dinners, weekend trips, and social events to build Morrison and Associates into something I could be proud of. I'd invested my savings, my health, and my relationships into making other people wealthy. And this was how they planned to repay me. I picked up the silver-framed photograph from my desk. Helen and me at the company's 20th anniversary party. She died 3 years ago, but she'd lived long enough to see the business flourish. "You should be proud," she'd said during her final weeks. "You built something that will outlast both of us." Now they wanted to erase me from my own creation. But Vincent Hartwell hadn't survived 37 years in the cutthroat world of corporate finance by being naive. I knew where every financial skeleton was buried, every questionable decision that had been made for the sake of profit margins. Most importantly, I knew exactly which clients would follow me if I chose to start over. Marcus and Sarah thought they were dealing with a confused old man ready to be put out to pasture. They had no idea they'd just awakened something much more dangerous. A seasoned businessman with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. I opened my laptop and began typing, my fingers steady on keys that had built an empire. If they wanted to play corporate warfare, I was about to teach them how it was really done. The next morning arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of Denver weather that matched my mood perfectly. I drove to the office with a briefcase containing documents that would change everything, my plan crystallizing with each mile. Morrison and Associates occupied 3 floors of a glass tower in downtown Denver, with my name on the company letterhead and my signature on every major contract. But walking through the lobby that morning, I felt like a stranger in my own building. Marcus was already holding court in the main conference room when I arrived, running the weekly staff meeting that had been my responsibility for over 2 decades. Through the glass walls, I could see him gesturing enthusiastically at a PowerPoint presentation titled, "Modernizing Our Client Experience." Nobody looked up when I passed. The administrative staff, who used to greet me warmly, were suddenly very busy with their computer screens. Jennifer Walsh, the receptionist I'd hired straight out of college, couldn't quite meet my eyes when I said good morning. They knew. Somehow, word of my impending forced retirement had already spread through the office grapevine. I was being treated like a terminal patient that no one wanted to acknowledge was dying. In my office, I found a manila envelope on my desk with my name typed on a label. No personal touch, no handwritten note, just the cold efficiency of corporate bureaucracy. Inside was exactly what I'd expected, the generous early retirement package Marcus and Sarah had discussed the night before. The numbers were impressive, I had to admit. A lump sum payment of $850,000, plus full health benefits for 2 years. To someone who didn't understand the true value of what I'd built, it might seem like a gift. To me, it felt like being paid to participate in my own execution. The covering letter, signed by Marcus with Sarah's initials in the corner, was a masterpiece of corporate doublespeak. "Dear Vincent, after careful consideration of your extraordinary contributions to Morrison and Associates, we believe the time has come to celebrate your legacy while positioning the company for future growth. This retirement package reflects our deep appreciation for your decades of service and provides you with the financial security to enjoy your golden years." Golden years. As if being forced out of my life's work was some kind of reward. I was reading the fine print when Marcus knocked on my open door, his face arranged in an expression of manufactured concern. "Vincent, I see you found the proposal. I hope you understand this comes from a place of genuine respect for everything you've accomplished here. I looked up from the papers, studying his face with the same attention I'd once devoted to analyzing financial statements. Marcus Brennan was 42 years old, married to a woman who spent his salary on yoga retreats and organic groceries, living in a house I'd helped him finance when the bank initially rejected his mortgage application. "It's certainly unexpected," I said carefully, folding the papers and setting them aside. I hadn't realized the company was looking to make changes to senior management. "It's not about making changes, Vincent. It's about evolution. The industry is shifting toward digital solutions and younger demographics. We need to position ourselves accordingly." "I see, and you believe I'm incapable of adapting to these evolutions?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably in my guest chair, the same chair where I'd counseled him through his divorce, his father's death, and his struggles with self-doubt. "It's not about capability. It's about maximizing everyone's strengths. You've earned the right to enjoy retirement while you're still young enough to truly appreciate it." The condescension in his voice made my jaw clench. "How thoughtful of you to be concerned about my happiness." "The offer expires at the end of this month," Marcus continued, standing to leave. "I'd encourage you to discuss it with your family and financial advisor. It's really an unprecedented opportunity." After he left, I sat alone in my office, surrounded by 37 years of achievements. Awards on the walls, client thank you letters in frames, photographs from company retreats and holiday parties where Marcus and Sarah smiled beside me like beloved children. But I wasn't angry anymore. Anger was an emotional response, and emotion had no place in strategic planning. What I felt was something much more dangerous: cold, calculated determination. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a leather-bound address book that contained information worth more than Marcus could possibly imagine. Every major client contact, every business relationship, every professional connection I'd cultivated over nearly 4 decades in the industry. Then I reached for my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in over a year. "Coldwell and Associates, this is Patricia speaking." "Patricia, this is Vincent Hartwell. Is Thomas available?" Thomas Caldwell had been my biggest competitor for 20 years, a brilliant accountant who'd built his own firm through the same combination of hard work and client relationships that had made me successful. We'd competed for the same accounts, bid against each other on major contracts, and maintained the kind of respectful professional rivalry that bordered on friendship. "Vincent, what a pleasant surprise. Thomas is in meetings all morning, but I know he'll want to speak with you. Can I have him call you back? Actually, Patricia, I was hoping to schedule lunch with Thomas sometime this week. There's a business proposition I'd like to discuss with him." 2 hours later, my phone rang. "Vincent Hartwell, you old shark. Patricia says you want to have lunch and talk business. What are you plotting?" Thomas's voice carried the warmth of genuine friendship mixed with the caution of an experienced businessman who knew I didn't make casual social calls. "Let's just say I'm exploring new opportunities, Thomas. Are you free tomorrow? The Capitol Grill, noon?" "Wouldn't miss it. Should I bring my checkbook?" I laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd had since overhearing Marcus and Sarah's betrayal. "Bring your appetite for expansion, Thomas. I think you're gonna like what I have to say." After hanging up, I pulled out a legal pad and began making lists. Clients who would follow me to a new firm. Employees who'd been overlooked for promotion and might be interested in a fresh start. Financial resources I could access without touching Morrison & Associates. Most importantly, I began documenting every piece of proprietary information I'd developed over the years. Client preferences, industry contacts, strategic insights that existed nowhere else but in my memory and personal files. Marcus and Sarah thought they could erase me from my own company and step into my shoes without missing a beat. They were about to learn that Vincent Hartwell wasn't just another aging employee marking time until retirement. I was the institutional memory of Morrison and Associates, the relationship foundation that kept major clients loyal, the strategic mind that had guided the company through 3 economic recessions and countless industry changes. At starting tomorrow, I was going to become their biggest nightmare. The lunch with Thomas Caldwell went better than I dared hope. We met at the Capitol Grill, a restaurant where I'd closed more deals than I could count, sitting at my usual corner table with a view of the Denver skyline. Thomas arrived precisely at noon, looking every bit the successful businessman he'd become. At 64, he was 3 years younger than me, but had maintained the same sharp edge that had made him dangerous competition for decades. "You look good, Vincent. Retirement must be agreeing with you." I smiled, cutting into my ribeye with precision. "Who said anything about retirement?" Thomas raised an eyebrow, setting down his water glass. "The industry grapevine says Morrison and Associates is transitioning to younger leadership. Word is you're taking a generous golden parachute." The industry grapevine is about to be very surprised. I pulled out a folder containing client lists, financial projections, and a business plan I'd spent all night perfecting. What would you say to the possibility of acquiring Morrison's entire client base, along with their most experienced senior partner? Thomas opened the folder, his expression shifting from casual curiosity to intense focus as he scanned the numbers. "My God, Vincent, this represents almost 60% of Morrison's annual revenue. 63% to be exact. And every single client relationship is built on personal trust and professional history that Marcus Brennan and Sarah Chen couldn't replicate if they had a decade to try." But how? These clients signed contracts with Morrison and Associates because they trusted Vincent Hartwell. When Vincent Hartwell leaves Morrison and Associates, a significant number of them will want to follow their trusted advisor to his new professional home. Thomas leaned back in his chair, his mind clearly racing through the implications. "You're talking about devastating your own company." "I'm talking about leaving a company that decided I was obsolete. The devastation is simply a natural consequence of their poor judgment." I watched Thomas study the financial projections, knowing he was calculating the potential profit from acquiring clients worth millions in annual fees. Caldwell and Associates was successful, but this would double their revenue overnight. "What would you need from me?" Thomas asked finally. "Partnership. Not employment, not consultation, but full partnership in an expanded firm. Caldwell, Hartwell and Associates has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" Thomas extended his hand across the table. "Vincent, you devious bastard. When do we start?" The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of clandestine meetings and careful preparation. Thomas and I worked out of his office in the evenings, crafting client transition letters and preparing presentation materials for the launch of our expanded partnership. I continued showing up at Morrison and Associates each morning, playing the role of the confused old man considering retirement while secretly documenting every piece of information that would be useful in my new venture. Marcus and Sarah grew increasingly impatient as my self-imposed deadline approached. They scheduled more casual conversations about my future, each one more transparent in its pressure tactics. "Vincent, I hope you understand that this retirement package won't be available indefinitely," Sarah said during one particularly aggressive Friday afternoon ambush in my office. "The board is eager to finalize transition plans for the coming fiscal year." The board. As if Morrison and Associates had ever had a real board of directors. It was Marcus, Sarah, and 3 junior partners who did whatever Marcus told them to do. "I appreciate the urgency, Sarah. It's just such a big decision. 37 years is a long time to walk away from." "But think of the opportunities," Marcus added, leaning forward with fake enthusiasm. "Travel, hobbies, spending time with family. You've earned the right to enjoy your golden years." That phrase again, golden years. as if the most productive and experienced years of my life were somehow less valuable than my inexperienced youth. "You're absolutely right," I said, reaching for the retirement papers on my desk. "I've made my decision." Both of them leaned forward eagerly, probably calculating how quickly they could redecorate my office and divide up my client responsibilities. I picked up my pen, poised it over the signature line, and looked up at their expectant faces. "I've decided to decline your generous offer." The silence that followed was worth every sleepless night I'd spent planning my revenge. "I'm sorry." Sarah's voice rose slightly, the professional composure cracking around the edges. "I'm declining the retirement package. I've decided I'm not ready to step away from the work I love. I plan to continue as senior partner for at least another 5 years." Marcus's face went through several colors before settling on an unpleasant shade of red. "Vincent, I think you're misunderstanding the situation. This isn't really a choice. The company is moving in a new direction, and frankly, your presence is complicating that transition." "Complicating?" I set down my pen and folded my hands, enjoying their discomfort. "How exactly am I complicating anything?" "Your methods are outdated," Sarah blurted out, then immediately looked like she wished she could take it back. "What I mean is, the industry is evolving, and we need to position ourselves with forward-thinking leadership." "I see. So you're saying that after 37 years of building this company, my services are no longer required?" "It's not personal, Vincent." Marcus had recovered some of his composure, but I could see the anger simmering beneath his practiced diplomacy. "It's simply business reality. We're prepared to be generous, but we're not prepared to be held back by outdated approaches." I stood up slowly, every inch the dignified senior statesman I'd always been. "Well then, I suppose we have nothing more to discuss." "So you'll sign the papers?" Sarah asked hopefully. "No, Sarah. I'll be cleaning out my office." The look of relief on their faces was almost comical. They thought I was capitulating, accepting defeat like a tired old man who'd finally recognized his obsolescence. "We're sorry it has to be this way, Vincent," Marcus said, extending his hand for a farewell shake. "But I think you'll find this transition works out for everyone's benefit." I shook his hand firmly, looking directly into his eyes. "Marcus, I absolutely guarantee that this transition will work out exactly as everyone deserves." Monday morning, I arrived at Morrison & Associates for the final time as an employee. I'd spent the weekend boxing up personal items, selecting which files to take and which to leave behind. Everything I needed was either in my briefcase or already transferred to Caldwell & Associates. The office felt different that morning, charged with the kind of tension that preceded major changes. Word had obviously spread that Vincent Hartwell was cleaning out his office, and people were watching from their cubicles as I made my final preparations. At 10 a.m., I walked to the main conference room where Marcus had called an impromptu staff meeting. He was standing at the head of the table, radiating the confidence of a man who believed he'd successfully orchestrated a corporate coup. "Thank you all for gathering on short notice," Marcus began, his voice carrying across the room. "I wanted to personally announce that Vincent Hartwell has decided to pursue other opportunities outside of Morrison & Associates. While we're sad to see him go, this transition creates exciting possibilities for our future growth." Polite applause rippled through the room, the kind of restrained response that accompanies awkward corporate announcements. I noticed several employees looking uncomfortable, particularly the older staff members who remembered when I'd hired them personally. "Vincent has been instrumental in building this company," Marcus continued, "and we wish him all the best in his future endeavors." He gestured toward me, expecting some kind of gracious farewell speech. Instead, I stood and pulled out a prepared statement. "Thank you, Marcus. I do indeed have an announcement about my future plans." I looked around the room at faces I'd known for years, people whose careers I'd guided and whose successes I'd celebrated. Some looked genuinely sad to see me go. Others seemed curious about what I might say. As of today, I'm joining Caldwell and Associates as a senior partner in their expanded firm. For those of you who might be interested in new opportunities, I'll be available to discuss positions with a company that values experience alongside innovation. The room went dead silent. I could practically hear Marcus's teeth grinding as he realized what I just announced. Additionally, I'll be reaching out to clients who might prefer to continue working with the advisor who's managed their accounts for the past decade or more. I believe in giving people choices about their professional relationships. Sarah's face had gone pale. She understood the implications better than Marcus did. I wasn't just leaving quietly. I was taking my clients with me. Of course, this transition will be handled with complete professionalism and in accordance with all legal and ethical guidelines, I continued. I want to thank everyone for the privilege of working alongside such talented professionals. I gathered my papers and walked toward the door, then paused for my final words. Marcus, Sarah, I wish you all the success you deserve in your new leadership roles. The emphasis on deserve was subtle, but I saw understanding flash across their faces. They'd gotten exactly what they'd earned. Walking out of Morrison and Associates for the last time, I felt lighter than I had in months. Behind me, I could hear the buzz of excited conversation as employees realized that the old guard wasn't going quietly into retirement. My phone was already ringing before I reached the elevator. Vincent, this is Harold Pemberton. I just heard some disturbing rumors about changes at Morrison and Associates. Please tell me you're not really leaving. Harold Pemberton represented my largest client, a family trust worth over $50 million that I'd managed for 15 years. His account alone generated more revenue than 3 junior partners combined. Harold, I'm afraid it's true. Morrison and Associates has decided to pursue a different direction, but I'd love to discuss continuing our professional relationship through my new partnership with Caldwell and Associates. When can we meet? I don't trust anyone else with my family's financial future, Vincent. You understand our situation better than anyone. By the time I reached my car, I'd fielded 6 similar calls. Word was spreading through my client network faster than I'd anticipated, and the response was everything I'd hoped for. That afternoon, Thomas and I held our first official meeting in our new shared office space. The phones hadn't stopped ringing since my departure announcement, and the response was overwhelming. 12 clients have already committed to transferring their accounts, Thomas reported, unable to hide his excitement. That's $23 million in managed assets in one afternoon. It's just the beginning, I assured him, reviewing the list of clients I still needed to contact. By the end of the week, we'll have doubled the size of Caldwell and Associates. My personal phone buzzed with a text message from Sarah. We need to talk. This isn't over. I showed the message to Thomas, who laughed out loud. What exactly does she think she's going to do? Sue you for being too good at your job? I typed back a simple response. You're absolutely right. It's not over. It's just beginning. Over the next month, the exodus from Morrison and Associates exceeded even my most optimistic projections. 18 major clients followed me to Caldwell, Hartwell and Associates, representing over $60 million in managed assets. 3 experienced employees, including Jennifer Walsh from reception, accepted positions with our expanded firm. Marcus and Sarah tried everything they could think of to stop the hemorrhaging. They threatened legal action, claiming I was violating non-compete agreements that had expired years earlier. They offered retention bonuses to remaining clients, eating into profit margins they could barely afford to lose. They even attempted to spread rumors about my age and competency, which backfired spectacularly when longtime clients shared those conversations with me directly. The final blow came 6 weeks after my departure, when Morrison and Associates lost the Pemberton account. Harold not only transferred his family trust to our firm, but recommended us to 4 other wealthy families in his social circle. The ripple effect brought in another $30 million worth of business. I was reviewing quarterly projections in my new corner office when Thomas knocked on my door with a newspaper tucked under his arm. "Have you seen the business section today?" He spread the Denver Business Journal across my desk, pointing to a headline that made me smile. "Morrison and Associates seeks emergency funding after major client losses." The article detailed the firm's financial struggles, including Marcus's desperate search for capital investors and Sarah's resignation to pursue other opportunities. Reading between the lines, it was clear that the company I'd built over 37 years was collapsing without the institutional knowledge and client relationships I'd provided. "There's more," Thomas said, flipping to the second page. "They're laying off half their staff and considering bankruptcy protection." I felt a moment of genuine sadness for the employees who'd become collateral damage in Marcus and Sarah's power grab. But that sympathy was tempered by the satisfaction of seeing justice served. "What goes around, comes around," I said, folding the newspaper carefully. That evening, I called Harold Pemberton to thank him for his continued trust in my services. "Vincent, I have to ask you something," Harold said toward the end of our conversation. "Did you plan all of this? The way it happened, the timing? It seems almost too perfect to be coincidental." I looked out my office window at the Denver skyline, lights twinkling in buildings where other people were building their own dreams and fighting their own battles. "Harold, in 37 years of business, I've learned that success comes to those who are prepared when opportunity presents itself. Morrison and Associates presented me with an opportunity to demonstrate that experience and relationships still matter in this industry." Well, they certainly learned that lesson the hard way. After hanging up, I walked to the framed photograph on my credenza. Helen and me at the Morrison and Associates 20th anniversary party, both of us smiling beside the company sign that no longer bore my name. "We did it, sweetheart," I whispered to her memory. "They thought they could discard me like an old piece of furniture, but we showed them that loyalty and experience aren't obsolete." Vincent Hartwell hadn't just survived his corporate betrayal. I'd transformed it into the foundation of something better. At 67 years old, I wasn't marking time until retirement. I was building the next chapter of my professional legacy, one that would be based on respect rather than exploitation. Marcus and Sarah had taught me a valuable lesson about trust and betrayal. In return, I'd taught them something even more important. Never underestimate a man who spent a lifetime building relationships and acquiring knowledge. They'd wanted me gone so they could run the company according to their vision of modern business practices. Instead, they destroyed their own futures while handing me the tools to build something better. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting ahead, and Vincent Hartwell was just getting started. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Click the video on the left for another satisfying revenge story. Thank you for listening. Story analysis: the psychology of workplace revenge. What makes Vincent Hartwell's story so satisfying to listeners? Let's examine the psychological elements that make workplace revenge narratives particularly compelling for our audience. The power dynamic reversal. Vincent's story taps into one of our deepest fears: being discarded after decades of loyalty. In corporate America, age discrimination is real, but rarely discussed openly. When Marcus and Sarah dismiss Vincent as obsolete, they're voicing what many older workers suspect their younger colleagues are thinking. The satisfaction comes from watching Vincent flip this dynamic completely. Instead of accepting the role of victim, he uses his experience as a weapon. This reversal appeals to our sense of justice, the idea that wisdom and relationships still matter more than flashy presentations and buzzwords. A long game strategy. Notice how Vincent doesn't react emotionally to his betrayal. He doesn't storm into Marcus's office shouting accusations. Instead, he plays chess while his opponents are playing checkers. This methodical approach resonates with mature audiences who understand that real power comes from patience and planning. Vincent's revenge succeeds because it's built on legitimate business relationships and genuine value, not petty sabotage. He doesn't have to destroy anyone. He simply stops protecting them from the consequences of their own poor decisions. The mentorship betrayal. Perhaps the most painful element is the personal betrayal by people Vincent nurtured. Marcus wasn't just an employee. Vincent personally mentored him, helped him through personal crises, even assisted with his mortgage. This violation of trust cuts deeper than simple office politics. Many listeners have experienced similar betrayals. The protege who turns on their mentor, the younger colleague who takes credit for others' work, the company that discards loyal employees for short-term profits. Vincent's story provides vicarious satisfaction for these unresolved injustices. The dignity factor. Throughout his ordeal, Vincent maintains his professionalism and dignity. He doesn't beg, threaten, or lose his composure. This restraint makes his ultimate victory more satisfying because it's earned through character rather than luck or accident. When he walks out of Morrison and Associates for the final time, he does so with his head high, having proven that class and competence are timeless qualities that can't be dismissed by corporate trends. Real-world applications. Vincent's story offers practical lessons for anyone facing workplace betrayal. Document everything. Vincent's meticulous record-keeping became his salvation. Maintain external relationships. His client connections were his true asset. Stay professional. Emotional reactions would have undermined his credibility. Have an exit strategy. He didn't wait to be pushed. He jumped on his own terms. Turn betrayal into opportunity. Sometimes being forced out opens doors to something better. The story works because it shows that experience has value, loyalty matters, and sometimes the best response to being underestimated is simply proving the doubters wrong. Share your own story. Have you experienced workplace betrayal, age discrimination, or corporate injustice? Have you witnessed someone get their comeuppance after treating others poorly? I want to hear from you. Send me your real-life revenge stories to your email address. Whether it's a satisfying workplace victory, a neighbor who finally got what they deserved, or a family member who learned not to take advantage of your generosity, I'm looking for true stories that show justice being served. Your story could be featured in a future episode, with all names and details changed to protect privacy, of course. The best revenge stories come from real life, where patience, planning, and perseverance triumph over arrogance and betrayal. Don't let your victory go untold. Share it with listeners who understand that sometimes karma just needs a little help from someone who refuses to be a victim. If you enjoyed this story and analysis, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Click the video on the left for another satisfying revenge story. Thank you for listening.